this is going to be a full session. So we'll start right away. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. You were. All right. Welcome again to the session of the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We will talk about network data and how we use it and why we bother. You see our names on the screen here, on this screen. In order of appearance, but not importance, Thea Schepers, that's me. I'm an IATI Senior Advisor of the Ministry, and in that capacity, one of the things I do is support partners in publishing good data, because we ask all of them to. Then there's Herman van Loon, who most of you know, I think, by now. He's one of the original, one of the OGs of IATI. And Cobi Mars is the last speaker, and she will show you a dashboard. She's one of the people that use the data in the ministry. And Herman will also show you a dashboard and one tool that he has created that makes supporting these partners that I am always so busy with a little bit easier to do. So I want to start with showing you something. This is something that will take a while to load, and that illustrates quite nicely, I think, one of the points of this session. It will show you how our network looks like, our network of partners, and it illustrates, I think, quite well that development cooperation and humanitarian aid is a collaboration. These, I hope you can see it well. This is a network of organizations. All of those dots are an organization. And we, as a ministry, are now completely eclipsed. We are in the background there. This is live data from, I think, yesterday. So not quite live, but still young, shall we say. That blue dot that's appearing from that big cloud, that's the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the Netherlands. All of those other dots are organizations. And the red and blue lines is funding. So if you are funded by the Netherlands, you are in here somewhere. And Leo, for example, definitely knows that he's in here because he's one of the giant clouds of organizations. There's two, that big cloud in the middle has two organizations at its core. I don't know why it doubles up like that. That's RVO, who is also here, which has a lot of partners. We talked about that yesterday. And Oxfam Novib also has a lot of partners. That's Leo's. My point of this, as I said, is that this is a collaboration. I put the full picture here just in case it wouldn't load, but it has. So why do we, as a ministry, use this data like this? IATI is important for us for a couple of reasons, actually two main reasons. One is a very pragmatic one. If 80% of your funding is indirect and you need data on how effective it is, you need that data from your partners. So we ask all of our partners, and sometimes also their partners, to publish their data. So as it says here, to properly inform everyone, including Parliament and the well-known taxpayer, we need to have information in data format. We have PDFs, but that's not really working so well if Parliament asks you how much funding you've sent to Ethiopia. So we need data. I'll just do all of this at once. A more important one for us is accountability in the sector. We need donors, all of us need donors like the MFA, ask questions like, are we doing the right things? Are we doing them in the right locations? Do they actually work? If we follow the money, where does it end up? that's important for us to ask, but others in this network have different questions to ask. If you're a grassroots organization or an individual, you might want to know, what happens in my area? Are those the things that I need? If there is an activity, has that activity learned from past mistakes made by others or by themselves? Also want to say, everyone in this room has perhaps a favorite stakeholder. You might think we're doing this mostly for partner country governments, or you might think, look at things from a donor's perspective. I personally always have a weak spot for CSO, small or international. I believe we're all wrong in that. I think IATI doesn't become effective until all of us use this data and all of us, as many as possible, publish that data. So, if those links are so important, that's a very key thing to get right in the data quality. Because if we don't have this correctly, something like this might happen. I did my best on that. It's quite tragic looking, I find. There we go. There it goes. The organization will never come back. With all of its partners, it's gone. It might come back if we restore that link, but still. So this needs to happen very well. And we, as the Open Data team in the ministry, spend a lot of time making sure that we support our partners correctly. We do that a couple of ways. First of all, we had an email address. In 2020, basically all we had was an email address. So you send an email, you get an answer back. That didn't really work anymore when we started a new 5-year program, asked everybody to publish, and again, also their partners to publish. Big programs that Cobi will say more about later on. Half of those people had never published in IATI before, half of those organizations, and I think it was a couple of hundred that were new to this. So we needed a bit more than just an email address. We had a whole program of webinars called Guided Implementation. Details I will skip for now, but they're on the website. We have the Helpdesk website where we put all of the resources that we find important and that people ask questions about. We use IATI Connect, the Netherlands corner, that Sandler and I always secretly call the orange space, that where people can ask questions also to each other. Every now and then I see people answer each other's questions, which makes me very happy. And we have question hours on Zoom where people can just drop in and ask a question face to face. Newsletter once every quarter that hopefully makes sure that people actually visit the website. That's a whole package, and it's quite time consuming. That's just 1.5 person a week, me full-time and Pelle Aardema, who you also know, part-time. This is the main article on the website, and that shows how to link to the donor. That shows that that's a key element that people sometimes need support on. But it does work, and I know it works because I should show you that visual there. There's a common theme in this talk, and that's that visual. It will, I know that it works because this is a screenshot that I took to write this article in September 2020. We hadn't done any of these webinars, those question hours, any of it. And a couple of weeks ago, Herman took a new screenshot, and that looked a little bit different. So that's basically the result of our support visualized. So we are very happy about that. Of course, I have to say there may be, this is a lot of organizations. It's possible that there are duplicates because if you write an organization, its name differently, it will lead to duplicates here unless you also add its organization ID, which makes IDs also quite important. So, very proud of that. Then there is a sheet here on what works if you want to make sure that other people publish data correctly. I'll just go through it very quickly because the most important thing is to have Herman show his tool, and both Herman and Cobi show their dashboards. But feedback is hugely important to data quality. If we just tell people that we see their data and we see their mistakes, they will actually fix them. Of course, you also have to give support and also not in a way that makes them panicked if they make a mistake. I mean, perfection is perhaps the goal. It's not really the goal for this Friday afternoon. You just improve all the time, and that's most important. And of course, use, as we all know, data that's not used is usually bad data. It will never improve. Okay, so we are now sometimes a little bit tired, Pelle and I. We do all this. I was told to put a cat in every slideshow, so this is, there you go, it's a cat. I hope it makes you happy. Yeah, it's a lot of work. We have to do all sorts of other things. We build dashboards. We advise internally on open data. So and Pelle also has to run a business in the other half of the week. So we needed every help we can get, and Herman has created a tool that does exactly that. Herman, go ahead.
Thank you, Thea. Can you give me please the next slide? Yes. Yeah, the idea was that a lot of the issues in our IATI data can be detected automatically. So if you want to reduce the amount of support work, it would be nice if every publisher, after he or she publishes their data, automatically gets a summary of the data quality they published, technical data quality. And especially important, of course, when you want to verify the data quality of your IATI data is, of course, if your network links are okay. So the idea was to automate that process, have immediate feedback after the data are published within 24 hours, and also make it so that it is easily scaled up. And we started in the beginning with 10 partners, and we are now processing each day about 470, 480 partners. And you can imagine that the support work also grows linearly in time with that, and that is not feasible to maintain the effort without expanding the team very much, and that is not possible. Can you give me the next slide, Thea? So the idea is that we have a data quality cycle, and it's very known cycle. I think you publish your data, you get your automated feedback on that, and then you are able to improve on your data so that the next time you publish, your data is a little bit better than the next time. And of course, there is always the support of the Open Data Helpdesk, because we are not thinking that automated feedback will solve every problem. In the end, a lot of people will want to have a special or specific advice on certain topics they wrestle with to get it right. The next slide, please, Thea. Now, this is the most technical part I'm going to show you in this presentation. So please keep with me. This is a schema of how this automatic feedback works. And what I think is very nice to see here, that we make use of the standard IATI Data Validator, which is a key component in making this possible, and also the IATI Data Store. And the IATI Data Validator we use to retrieve all the error and warning messages about the data quality of the XML. And these are the technical issues the data validator finds. But there is in one area the data validator is lacking, and that is the checking on the validity of the activity identifiers used in your IATI data. And as Thea mentioned before, this is a critical element to make sure you have insight in the network and to have network transparency. So that's why we use the data out the IATI data store. And basically what we do is that we each night load all existing IATI identifiers from the data store and use that to check if the IATI identifiers used in the partners XML are really valid references. Now, this feedback generator processes all these data, generates a PDF report, and sends it by email. Would you please click on the yes? And this is the important one slide back still. Yes, the important thing now is that not everybody gets this email automatically because we don't want to spam our partners, but you can opt in on this. So please, if you want to be part of this service, simply send an email to the Helpdesk Open Data at minbusa.nl, and then we'll add you to the list of publishers who automatically gets this report. And the second thing to mention is we are in beta still. That means that we are still developing and improving the process and the report. This is an example of such a report. You get this email, IATI data quality feedback, with the PDF with the summary of the error messages attached. Next slide, please. And this is an example of the contents of this report. We took as an example Oxfam. And I have to say, Oxfam really produces high quality data because these are the only two error messages I could find when I looked at this data a couple of weeks ago. So that's really, really impressive. And we have here two small errors. One error is the reference being used, which seems not to be a valid IATI identifier. That's the top. That's the red top box. Would you please click yes? And the invalid reference is the USI and the number, and that's being presented in a specific activity of Oxfam. And the second error message is please,
Sorry.
can you go back?
I'm now giving everything away. Sorry.
Okay, the second error, the second error message is an error message which is from the IATI Data Validator, in which there is a character used in an quote identifier which seems to be invalid, but of course this represents not applicable, and therefore it gives a warning.
Is this Leo's data? Is that why he's laughing?
Yes, this is Leo's data, but I have to stress again, I've almost never seen any better data than that from Oxfam. This has really improved enormously above along the last few years. So I think we do not do any better than this.
Next slide.
Yes, next slide, please. And then we come to the presentation, because we have talked about network data. And network data is a little bit of an abstract discussion if you don't see the data themselves and what it makes possible. And I will try now to share my screen with you.
In the meantime, there is a question from UNHCR asking us if the ID could be added to contribution agreement letters. It actually is, or you can deduct it from there. But we will find you later and explain that. Or they are online, I guess. So we'll email them. Thank you, Justin. And yes, improving data quality is a never-ending journey. There's the dashboard.
There's the dashboard.
That's the dashboard.
And yes, what you see here is a country dashboard. And this is a list of all the activities of ourselves, of the Netherlands Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and of course, as Thea explained, we do 80% of our funding goes through intermediate organizations. And that means that we do only about 20% of our activities directly earmarked in a country. But we are very interested which part of these activities we are doing worldwide or regional eventually end up in a certain country. And that's why we need IATI data, because if we link the IATI data up, we link our own activities with the activities of our partners, we can eventually see where the money eventually is flowing to, whether it's direct or indirect, it doesn't matter anymore. And the great thing about that is that we get far more insight in what happens where. Let me, for instance, show a specific country. I choose here Bangladesh. This is the scary part in a live demonstration. Will the system respond in time? Now you see here that this list now only shows the Bangladesh activities. And you see also here if a ministry activity has IATI data from partners or not. So if the coverage of IATI data is limited for a certain country, of course, these figures will not be complete. And that's why we are working so hard to get all our partners publishing in IATI, because that gives a far more complete picture than we have right now. Then let's say, what then are the details for that country? And I show you the detailed partner information. And what I see here now is what is happening with the funds of the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs and who is involved. What you can see here is the sectors which are being funded. What you can see here is all the recipient organizations in Bangladesh. And what you can see here is the publishers which publish specific data for Bangladesh. I have to change something here. Yes, now I have visibility on the whole screen. I can also zoom in and say, okay, who exactly is in the water supply and sanitation business? And also very interesting from our internal point of view, which departments within the ministry are involved in that. And you see in drink water and sanitation, we have DDE, the DHA, that's our embassy, but also some other departments, all actively, direct or indirect, in Bangladesh. And especially the departments, the central departments, often give funds to multilateral organizations or large international NGOs, and they do not know beforehand where their money is going. But with the help of IATI data, we can make that far better visible and present a complete picture of what's happening here in one country.
We should stress that this is, like you said, direct and indirect.
This is direct and indirect. Yes, it's also our direct funding, but also our indirect funding. And you can also zoom in and say, okay, I want to see all activities from a certain publisher which we are funding. And that's basically the same principle.
There's a question also in the chat. Is this an internal dashboard? Yes, it is, because there's one vital part of this data that doesn't come from IATI, but from our own systems. And that's not checked for sensitive data. So we cannot publish this specific one outside of the ministry because we work in human rights a lot and in sensitive topics. And we don't want to, of course, endanger our partners. So But it might be worth looking into if this is externally possible in some other way. Because we do get a lot of questions, why can I not find funding from the Netherlands in my country? Had a conversation about that yesterday. So and this is very insightful for us, but I imagine also for partners and partner countries.
And I have to add to that all the data here shown here are from IATI, except for this one data element. That's our internal organization. The rest is all IATI.
Yeah.
So, and that then I will go back one step.
If we have time, we should do that question, but I think we should speed up a little bit to give Cobi also enough time.
Yes, so I will show this very briefly.
Later, we'll come back to the question that was just asked in the chat.
You can also show the location information. And the interesting thing about this is that we as a ministry publish location information. These are the blue circles. But you see our partners are publishing far more location information. And that, of course, is to be expected because our partners are usually working far nearer to the field than we are, because we are doing 80% of our funding indirectly. And the dashboard gives also the possibility, for instance, to see what is behind such a data point. And yeah, I'll leave it with that and give the presentation now to Cobi, who will tell interesting things about how to measure results.
All right. I should share.
I stop sharing. Yeah.
Or I
guess.
Thank you. Cobi, go ahead.
Yes. So far, I think Herman nicely introduced the dashboard showing the funds. I will tell more about showing results and how we use the results. So, but in the Netherlands, we have a policy framework strengthening civil society, which started in 2021, which has a duration of 5 years and a budget of 1.3 billion euros. It has been implemented by 42 partnerships and 4 leading from the South funds, which are together active in over 65 countries. So as a senior monitoring, evaluation and learning advisor, I'm of course interested what are our results, where, etc., and what can we learn from what is happening. But I'm not able to read 42 annual reports and 46 annual reports, 46 baseline reports, 46 MTR reports, etc. So we have actually developed a nice dashboard. Next slide, please. So this dashboard is actually the latest, you can read it here, the latest in the series of IATI dashboards, and this is really focusing on this particular policy framework. It shows you where the different partnerships are active. It shows where we achieve results. It shows also the document links. It shows some information on budget, etc. It's an all-in-one window, so for me it's really helpful to be able to get an overview of what our different partnerships are doing in the different countries. Before showing the dashboard, a little bit of background on the dashboard. We actually developed specific strengthening civil society IATI indicator guidelines to be able to compare, aggregate, etc. data on result level. We needed to have some extra guidelines. So what we asked in these guidelines is information at country and regional level. They were not allowed to only publish at overall level. We do want the information per country, region, or where it's happening. Then we also asked not only to provide numbers. Often if you enter results information in IATI and publish it, you put in the indicator period, your baseline, your actual, and your target, and it's just a number. But numbers don't tell us the full story. We need qualitative information to understand what is really happening. So we asked all partners to provide some more information about the numbers in the comment boxes. Then we provided some guidelines on the use of indicator periods, whether indicators were to be measured per year or just baseline, midterm, and end line. And then I think the most important were the indicator codes, because we select the data based on the indicator coding. Then A slight disclaimer to the dashboard. Although we value transparency and the dashboard is very useful for us, it's do no harm is even more important than transparency. So we have a couple of partnerships working on really sensitive topics or in very difficult, complex countries. So we gave them either a waiver from IATI to not publish at all, or they publish data at a higher level, or they don't mention partner names, etc. There are different options to make the information available without creating any danger for either persons or organizations. And then, of course, sorry, one last thing. Then, of course, what was said already, the data is never 100% perfect. We are learning and improving, I think, every day, and our partners as well. So although the dashboard is not 100% complete, I think it's very interesting, gives very interesting insights. And this is a public dashboard. It's completely based on IATI data, and it can be found on the ministry's Helpdesk site. And now I will try to share my screen for a demonstration of the dashboard. Does this work? Because I cannot see it. Okay, great. So this is actually the first page. It's an overview of where our activities are happening. There's the map. Then there's something about the budget. So the overall budget is 1.3 billion, of which a certain amount is already transferred from the ministry to the different partners. You see some information on the indicators, some high over information on the indicators. And you see partnerships per framework. Actually, it's one policy framework, but below there are different grants instruments. So this is giving some information. And we have all kinds of nice filters for different policy officers and partners and interested public. They can select which data they want to see. Then above here, you have different tabs. I opened them already, as Tableau is sometimes a little bit slow. So one of the tabs I find really interesting is the one showing the results. So if I click on activity results, I see all activity results entered by all partners. They use our indicator coding, which makes it easy for me to focus on one indicator. So I will quickly select one. So as our policy framework is called strengthening civil society. So we have an indicator on strengthening capacities of civil society organizations. And if I just select this, this shows me the information on what we have achieved in 2021. And slowly, our partners are also starting to publish data on 2022. We asked a certain level of disaggregation. So we actually asked whether the CSOs which were strengthened are women-led, youth-led, whether they were not women-led, youth-led, or whether they were both. You can see the information per year, and you can see the overall information at the end. Then we made an extra tab on some of the indicators which we will not aggregate across the year. So this works similar, sorry, going to reload. This works similar as the previous tab, but only at the end there is no overall data because we don't aggregate the data, and it is something technical on monitoring, evaluation, and learning. What I also mentioned earlier is that we don't only ask the numbers, we also ask qualitative data. So therefore we built one tab in the dashboard, which is called activity results details. And in this tab, you can really see all information. Which of course you can also see this in D portal, but then you see it per activity. We can see it in Matis, but then you see it per partnership. Here I can select one indicator across all partnerships, across all partners, and do an analysis of what is in this indicator. So here you see actually every indicator period which is entered, which is published in IATI line by line. And let me quickly find one of which I know they filled it in quite well.
Always show the people the best data.
So if we look at Benkadi, then for the indicator, which is called number of laws blocked adopted, it's a lobby and advocacy program. We want to strengthen civil society to give them sufficient capacity to be able to influence politics and processes in their country. So here Benkadi shows for Burkina Faso that there was a law as baseline information, that there was a law adopted in 2014, but there were some shortcomings in it, and that they want to adjust those shortcomings the coming years, or at least put it on the table and discuss it with the government. We also know that policy change is a long-term process. So that's, I think, about the results. Then this should have been budget one. My apologies. Then we have also a tab on the budget. Here you see the budget per grant instrument and the amount that the ministry has already transferred. You can see this per grant instrument or per partnerships. You can see some level of detail. If you then want to know where the money goes, you can look into the relationship tab and look per partnership and see how they structure in IATI. So first of all, at level 0, we have our ministry's activity. Then in this case, Coordate, the lead activity, will links to us, and then their partners will link to Coordate. So this is a little bit about of the network structure that Thea has nicely shown in the visual. But then here you can see it per partnership, which different activities get funding from the Netherlands and where are they active. Then I skip the documents one. We also ask our partnerships and partners in general to publish also documents. So for the ministry, we actually publish our public appraisal document. So if you get a program proposal, we assess this and we have a public version which is published. And then we also ask our partners to publish quite some documents. They will publish the baseline documents, they will publish annual plans, annual reports, and evaluation reports. And this dashboard also allows me to select these reports. It's a little bit going slower than expected. I have it open now, sorry. But here you can select, if I'm, for instance, interested in just baselines, I can type baseline and I will get an overview of all baseline reports published. And here also, there is the do no harm rule. Partners publish their information, they publish the report, but they, in case it's too sensitive, they can get either a waiver to not publish at all, or they publish a public version, which is sometimes a little bit lighter than the total information which is shared with the ministry.
Again, this dashboard is on our website. Maybe Herman can share it, and otherwise I'll share it in the chat later. And it's also, URL is also on the last slide of our presentation.
Yes, can we go to the last slide while I try to stop sharing? I think I did. No, I didn't.
I was switching back to this visual again, but our slide, your last slide, sorry?
Yes, that one.
Okay, let me make that full screen.
Great. So then the most important question is, of course, where do we use the data for? We use it, first of all, as I'm a monitoring, evaluation and learning advisor, we use it to track progress. Compared to baseline, what is happening where, what can we learn from each other, which different partners are actually focusing on maybe changing the same laws, can we have a discussion with them? But we also use it for dialogue. And first of all, this is dialogue with civil society actors and partners, but also with national authorities. Our embassies are really interesting to know what the centrally funded partnerships in this policy framework are actually doing in their countries. So they can go to the dashboard, look up the data. For example, I think this is example for Burundi, shown here, see which partners are active in Burundi and on what results, what are their targets, what are they focusing on. And they can contact those partners, but they also can use that in policy dialogue with the different governments and show what we are doing and what we find important in this area.
Wonderful. Was that it? Or
Yes.
excellent. We have some questions. I think we may have skipped one or two. If we can scroll back up a bit. I have to do that, I guess. That's the downside of wanting full control. Where are we? I don't know if I can do that. Yeah. One of the things I see here is, do you have written documentation on your solution? This is both these dashboards are Tableau dashboards. OJ, do you mean the solution by Herman, the tool, the email tool, or do you mean the dashboards? Because I think the tool might be. Maybe Herman can say something about that.
Yes, we have fairly technical documentation about the buildup of the database with the network data. I can share that with you. There's no problem.
Okay.
But I don't know if that's if that is what OJ is looking for. I would be happy to show how the database is built up and how we've modeled the network into flat tables. But yeah, that's a fairly technical explanation, I think.
How we analyze results. Yes. Well, that's a Tableau thing, and also making sure that everyone has a baseline and an actual and a target, because otherwise you have no results. Oh, right, there's people here too. People have lots of questions. I don't know where to start. Stephen.
Thank you very much. As always, it's really brilliant and great to see. My question or my point is a bit more abstract. Excuse me.
Go for it.
There's a poster for a film, Alien, I think, that says...
Very abstract.
The poster says, "In space, nobody can hear you scream." And I think for IATI, it's something like, if you don't use a valid organization identifier, nobody can see your data. And I think we need to work on that.
Definitely.
Because I think you're working really, really hard to get these glue in the data together to do what we can see here. But the challenge is, how do we scale that? How do we make that the norm, that data is connected? How does that become our big thing? Because that's what we need to see, rather than just people pumping data out and thinking that's fine.
Yeah.
So how do we? It's a communications issue, but and obviously a technical issue. But really, we need the narrative to do that, because it's the key thing.
Yeah, I think in the standard and in the support, also by our own wonderful help desk of IATI itself, we should, I think, stress this, that this is important, because we do this way, development, cooperation, and humanitarian aid, but many other donors do. Even the NGO I worked for before works this way, where the data is not all in our own activities, but in our partners' activities, because that's where the actual action happens, and they know more about that activity than we do. So you publish it where it happens, and you publish what you do. But that does mean that link needs to be correct, like you said. So we put in some effort. That clearly worked for our little corner of IATI, or slightly big corner of IATI. But we should also make it much more a focus in all support. I should say that one article that we wrote is saved us a lot of time explaining everything 1,000 times. Sometimes we just reply to emails all day. Check this link, check this link, check this link. So I've made it part of the auto reply of the help desk email box.
I'd like to.
There's also partners that private sector partners. Some of us, some are in the room, like Data for Development, who support our partners if they have big. Sometimes these partnerships, we give them 20 million or 60 million, and they can also have room for support from consultancies. Is that an answer or?
No, thank you very much. We talked lots yesterday about data quality, and for me, this is a big sign of data quality. And I think Herman would say, not to put words into his mouth, if you do not link, you don't exist.
Yeah.
And I think we really have to simplify it for people. Show, not tell. Really get people behind this, because otherwise, lots of the things that we talked about yesterday cannot be overcome.
Yeah.
I'd like to add one thing to that, and that's I think we can easily make this easier for many publishers when we would add this check about using correct references to organizations and activities in the data validator. And I think this is a key item on the short term to implement in the data validator, because then everybody can easily check whether or not there are typos in references. And 80% of the problems with references is that they are simple typos, which can easily be fixed, but you have to be shown that it is not correct. You have to be informed that it is not correct.
Agreed completely. I don't remember who. Go ahead. Oh, Nasiba, I've been overlooking you all week. I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. No, thank you. My question is with regards to the results dashboard. I was just wondering, at which level do you publish those results? Because I would imagine that in the Netherlands, at any point in time, you have thousands of active projects, and each of those projects has its own results matrix. So how do you manage if you publish really your results at the project level? How do you manage thousands and maybe potentially hundreds of thousands of individual results? Thank you.
Well, in general, that's a very tough one. And I think when we originally started thinking about this community exchange, we thought of a session only about how to do that. Maybe next time we can actually get that off the ground in much detail. But in this case, what really helped was this result framework that Cobi mentioned, where every result can be linked to ours by a code, by a reference code. So even if you word it differently, I've reached this amount of people, or this number of women, or youth-led organizations, we can still link it to our own basket results, as we sometimes call them. But yeah, if everyone has their own framework, that's basically impossible. You're right. But we still look at those results more on an individual activity level. But yeah, and we also encourage everyone to publish the results as far downstream as possible. So mostly at the lowest level activity, because that's where those results were achieved. There's also outcome and impact results that are more on a program level, I think. Cobi, do you want to add anything to that?
Yes, thank you, Thea. I think you explained the most. I just wanted to add that within this policy framework, we actually asked our partners to link to at least 3 of our MFA indicators. So we asked them in IATI to publish data on those indicators. They are free to add more. So that's their own choice. I know some of the partnerships use IATI also for their own internal dashboards and publish quite some information. Others choose to only publish the data we request.
Right. And of course, there's other activities outside of these partnerships, because this is just one framework of programs. We have many more activities based on other themes, not about strengthening civil society, but climate and of course, lots of other stuff. And they have no fixed framework, or at least not yet. Go ahead.
So, network data,
Yes.
to Stephen's point. So, I've been doing this for 5 years, but I still feel quite new compared to some of you guys. It feels like there are some really fundamental things that we as a community have never agreed on, such as who should publish, how much should they publish, who should be networking. And as a result, the answer always seems to be everyone should publish everything and everyone should network to everything. But because there's no agreement, you've got groups like the Dutch and the Belgians who network all their data. We once produced an image like the one that Thea showed with we called it the jellyfish. And you could see little blobs, which were the Dutch and the Belgians, with all their data connected nicely. And then most other donors, they don't connect their data up, right? And they don't get their implementers to publish. So how do we get to some kind of agreement that over the next 5 years, we will move towards a position where at least we are clear on who should publish, what types of organization, what's the, and to what extent should they network their data so that we can actually tackle this bit by bit? Because while we're saying everyone should publish absolutely everything and connect to everybody, and a one-person at the moment, the assumption is that a one-person NGO in Lesotho should publish to IATI, even if they're at the very far end of the delivery chain, and there's 6 partners between them and the donor. And we've never agreed on actually defining that and figuring out what we should do. So from a governance perspective, I guess the question is, and from a principle perspective, how do we agree on some of these fundamental things so that we can start chipping away and make progress?
Right. Yeah. That's, I think, is the million-dollar question these days in IATI, the current state that we're in. You should say the extreme case that you mentioned, a one-person organization in Lesotho with 6 partners in between them and their donor. If that's the case, it's probably relatively easy to publish the data. You go to HStream or IATI Publisher and you fill in relatively simple data. Where it gets complicated is if you have 5 partners downstream and you have to have an activity for each of them. That's where it gets complicated. But I must say, we experience this every day. People find publishing complicated.
It's not, sorry to interrupt you, it's not just that, right? It's so we have 1,500 publishers. We've got some tiny organizations, which is awesome that they're publishing, but we're missing some of the world's biggest implementers. And I don't just mean China and people that don't come to the table. I mean like major American consultancies and INGOs and right. So on. So we haven't even agreed like the top 20% of spending should be published and networked. We're just saying everyone should. So therefore, and as a result, we don't seem to have made progress, or at least know where we're heading.
Yeah, I agree completely. Maybe other people have ideas on this. I think this is one of the topics we should discuss and get more alignment. Of course, we do it this way because we passionately believe that this is the way. Because there's very little funding, I think, or maybe there is quite a lot of funding that the donor directly spends in a country. I'm sure that happens a lot as well. So that's the simple situation where we don't need a solution, I guess. Everything in between us and that gets, and even we are not completely there. And a lot of our partners don't publish because it goes one level deeper and there it stops. And we are practical enough to know that that's the achievable thing so far. But I think we are currently in IATI struggling with this question, and perhaps in future community events or future meetings of some kind, we should find more of an agreement or a middle ground. What are your ideas?
Exactly that. So we ought to have some, and we're not going to be able to achieve everything. We've got to be realistic that some donors have genuine bureaucracy barriers to publishing, to getting their contractors to publish a lot of this stuff. But if we can sit down and figure it out, we could at least say, all right, in the next 5 years, what we want to do is get to this point, and then we can stop and reflect and see whether that was worth the effort, whether the added data is useful, and whether we then want to push on or if we want to change direction. But it feels from and I recognize I'm probably wrong in some of this because I'm not as knowledgeable as a lot of you on this, but it does feel like we're trying to just achieve everything, and therefore we're getting a scattergun results rather than saying, no, actually, the top 20 implementers for USAID or FCDO or whoever actually represent often 50% of the funding. Let's make sure that they're publishing first and then move on from there. Not stop smaller organizations, but what we need is a forum where we can come together with an agenda that lays out some of these fundamentals and bring the key people together and figure it out.
Yeah, I think that's a pragmatic approach to at least get to a fuller picture of even just donors and work our way downstream from there, I guess. I think that would be excellent. I also think we need to have a real conversation about this. Yeah. Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, I would just echo that I think both of these things are extremely important and definitely worthy of an important conversation. Just coming from the data use perspective, both of these things are things that data users want, right? They want the big funders, but they also want to see the network, right? So I think that like both of these things are really important. I just like a common question, like especially when we're training civil society on using IATI data, like they definitely want to see the network, right? They want to see how the flow of funds is going down the chain. And I think this information and the fact that you're working on this is very important and useful. But I think that like it's often challenging. Like obviously this is like focused on like how you're using the information internally, which is also extremely important. But you know, I think the challenge we have faced in IATI for at least as long as I've been working with IATI is like making this information really accessible and usable externally. And particularly through IATI's data access tools, because I know how to figure it out, but I think most average data users don't know, like, you know, that the Netherlands is publishing like this, and like, how do I figure out, you know, like the chain, and like, where do I see all this information, and how is this all working, right? So that they can understand the network. So I guess my question is just like around like maybe your ideas or perspective on like how we make this information. And I know there's been lots of discussions about this, right, for a long time. Like, but just if there's any new ideas based on your work on this, on how we make this accessible to data users more broadly so that they can better understand like not just how you're publishing, but you know, this network, and like, you know, then other organizations do it in that network, right? So I think this is extremely important, and the information is all there, right? Like it's all published. It's just like, how do we enable data users to make sense of it?
Yeah, I think the tools, first of all, should assume that there is a network, and users should realize that there is a network. Well, development is a complicated a sector that we are in, and this reflects that thing over there. Oh no, it's not there anymore. It's also in some ways impractical, but it is the reality of how development is structured, and I think data should have two things in common. Two things in making. We should achieve two things. First of all, the users should be able to use it, and also it should reflect the reality, and somewhere it's far apart currently. I think it should get a little bit closer together. Go ahead.
So wearing one of the former hats, I was doing a bunch of work with DI on the IATI Humanitarian Data Portal, and I think it was the end of last year, we did a small piece of work with Open Data Services, looking at how much of a publisher's data is traceable down the chain. So basically, to start to get a bit of an idea of, you know, are we mostly looking at traceability being very good, perhaps through NGOs for certain sorts of publishers, and not so good maybe through multilaterals. That breakdown is not something that we can already see, and that would be maybe a place for some future work to look at as well. But we can already start to see the share of, you know, a publisher's data that is traceable down the chain. And so I think maybe this is something also for, I don't know, Publish What You Fund or for the Data Quality Index or something like this, to start to look at, you know, from the publisher's perspective, you know, how much is traceable down the chain. Because I think, you know, Gary's right. If it is these sort of quite narrow segments of data that is very traceable, then if you know, I think the data quality, sorry, the data use tools, if they're showing only those narrow slices of information, that can also be confusing and misleading, and it maybe is not applicable across the sort of chain. But for me, also in Liberia, and in terms of thinking about how we would gradually move towards a more automated process for IATI import as well, I think the traceability, and especially between large organizations, is really important. And I think we're missing quite a lot at the moment.
Yes. Multilaterals could do a lot, and other large organizations can do a lot. We have to stop, but I'm just going to pretend I didn't see that until I give Stephen the final word.
Thank you. Just a quick point. I think in building on the other points, there's a thing about incentives that we need to think about. And you've shown lovely incentives, carrot-shaped incentives of the network and other things. But there's also a stick that you hold in the contract. And I'd be interested just to understand how much of what we're seeing is because you have that stick that's saying you must do this.
Yeah. Almost all of it.
Okay. Thank you.
I
and
mean,
we don't have the stick-shaped carrots elsewhere.
Yeah, there are organizations like Oxfam Novib and my own former organization, Plan International, who just do this for the transparency itself. There are also organizations who do this kicking and screaming, and only because we fund them. I think once you've reached a certain momentum, that becomes, you want to be visible in this open data thing that everyone knows. But as long as this is still a small thing, that is not the World Bank data of development, then it becomes it has to in some ways be a donor's job for now, I think. But I hope that's the start of it. But otherwise, yeah, great ideas, but we don't have the full answer either.
If I may add, it's very important for us to also show our partners what we do with it. So what we do with it internally as the ministry, but also how it's used. So last week, actually, we had a webinar in which Henry from Nigeria was speaking on how the government of Nigeria is using data. There was Nathalie Sidibe from Mali, who actually has built a platform so that people in Mali can also access the data specifically for what is happening in Mali. So we are also trying to motivate them not only by putting it in the grant decision, but also by showing how the data is used, by keeping on promoting the end objective of IATI.
That is true. Our colleagues sometimes are also a little bit skeptical the minute they see that this is not just used by us, but also, I mean, nobody in development works because they want to make a Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the Netherlands happy. They work because they want to make improve things in the countries that they work in. If the people in the countries that they work in also use the data, that's hugely motivating for them. So, yeah, everyone in the room who feels like that applies to them, please make sure that you make use of this data where you can. Is this